Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who I haven't yet had the opportunity to come and introduce myself to, my name's Nick Poulter. I'm an audit partner in the Guildford office here of BDO. I'm joined here today, as Stephen pointed out earlier, by two colleagues, in James Pilbeam and Duncan Berry. And I'll tell you just a little bit more about what they do as I go through. But the purpose of today, from my point of view, is trying to get across what we think the logical reasons for BDO partnering with NXD look like. And I think, Stephen, we've probably been talking for the best part of 2 years now to try I think so, probably to just try and look at the ways in which what we do somehow has relevance to everything that you do. Okay? And I guess we're looking at what are the mutual benefits, what are the ways that we at BDO and the various different offerings that we have can be of beneficial interest to NXD and its members and vice versa. And I suppose no matter how we ask the question, it does tend to always point back to the same principle, which is that we're all working with the same profile of businesses. So if I can just put that a little bit into context and tell you just a little bit about the background of BDO. We're a large international accountancy practice. We're now the 5th biggest accountancy practice in the world. And I suppose with that comes great scale, great credentials, the ability to reach into all sorts of different areas and locations. To just illustrate that point, we've now got 23 offices here in the UK. We're operating out of, I think, check my figures here, but 140 different countries, and we've got over 1,200 offices across those. So almost anywhere where people need to do business, we will have a presence. What does that therefore mean locally? It's all very well having those international credentials. What we need to be able to persuade people is why that is relevant to SMEs in the local marketplace. And I guess what it does do, using Guildford as an example, is it gives us the opportunity to draw from all of that expertise, whether that is specific streams of advice, specific locations, it doesn't really matter. We can draw from that, but we present it locally. And what we have in Guildford, and it's not a unique model, it is what BDO in the UK is built on, is we have a full service offering that we can give out of our office. So what I just wanted to do was perhaps have a look at what NXD is trying to do, what we're trying to do, and build some parallels between the two. And I have to say, I had a look at your website. I've been speaking to Stephen, as I said, for a couple of years now, but actually it comes much more quickly to life when you simply turn up an event like this and you get a chance to speak to everybody. But what I see here is an awful lot of people who've got fantastic credentials, wonderful track records advising businesses, and looking to draw upon that to advise SMEs in a local marketplace as they go through their growth phase. And quite frankly, that's just what we do. It's exactly the same principle. So if I just bring that to life by picking maybe just a couple of key phases of a business life cycle that you'll all be very, very familiar with, just to show how we, do that in real life. How do we actually advise these SMEs? So I suppose if you're looking at very, very early stage, start-up, pre-revenue, or in that slightly uncertain stage where I guess the revenue's coming in, but it's all about cost control. It's all about how can you really de-risk the business model? How can you maybe have as much as you can a variable cost model during that phase where you're trying to get sustainable revenue and profits? And the reason I bring that up is that's absolutely Duncan's area. Duncan heads up our Business Services and Accounting Department in Guildford and sits on the National Steering Committee. We call that BSNA, so I'll abbreviate it to that from now on. And that really is all about getting a focus right on businesses so that these entrepreneurs are really freed up to be able to concentrate on what they do best, running the business. And that can manifest itself in many different ways. Do please pick out Duncan later on and have a chat with him. But it can look like doing management accounts, doing back office finance functions, bookkeeping, payroll services, whatever you really want it to be. But it is an interesting point because when you do sell yourself as the 5th largest global accountancy firm, it can accidentally give off the impression that means we just simply cut out a whole range of small local businesses And nothing could be further from the truth. That is our bread and butter, the SME sector. So do find Duncan later on, and he can bring to life much more about what it is that we do. Probably worth also throwing in there that actually that may very well be the case, that we're advising a lot of these small companies. It does actually go well beyond that. We deal with a lot of large multinationals who are looking to put inward investment into the UK. We can help them out, get them off the ground. Often also in the large and listed sector, auditors are simply barred from providing certain accountancy services. So we step in there and give them advice. So the range of client really does go right from, it just covers the whole spectrum. So that's what we do at BSNA, and really help clients with those key touch points in their life cycle. As you then grow, you get on slightly more stable ground. You've got some sort of profitable business model that you can tell a good story around and look to sell, whether that is in the form of either exit planning, management buyouts, or simply seeking investment into that. We offer corporate finance services. We do that out of Guildford. That tends to have two different strands to it. We've got the M&A guys, very much taking a lead advisory role in any transaction, looking for strategic investors, dealing with negotiations around the structuring of any deal like that, and covering off all of the project management that you would expect to just make it a smooth process. We've then got our corporate finance side team who sit on what we call the transaction services side, vendor due diligence, purchaser due diligence, that type of thing. A lot of work actually in taking companies, early stage companies, into IPOs, onto the AIM market, that type of thing. So we do quite a lot of that. And of course, when you're thinking about potential investment opportunities, and certainly Dan touched on it earlier on, there's so many tax efficient ways that you can do that. So there's a natural bridge into, well, we've got to be able to speak to these companies, and we've got to make sure that, don't hit them on the head, you shouldn't have the tax leading the business decision. It's got to be the other way round. However, you just don't want to get that part of it wrong. There are so many little traps that you can fall into. When you're dealing with small businesses, you get some wonderful business people. You get people who've got a lovely track record of success sat right behind them. But actually, that company does need to formalise some of its infrastructure as it carries on that journey. It just gets a bit harder. The compliance requirements they're boring, but you don't want to get them wrong. But actually, it's really the advisory elements, all of the different ways that you can put together a tax-efficient structure. Get the basics right. Early stage company, you want cash back in. If you're carrying out research and development, there's some wonderful opportunities to put in claims, patent box regime, things like that. Not my area of expertise at all. That's why James is here. But I'm trying to give you a flavour of some of the different areas where, at different moments in a company's life cycle, that is what we are aware of and how we're trying to match the service offering that we can give to the business needs of those companies. I mentioned at the beginning, I'm an audit partner. That's a slightly less palatable service to try and sell to people, regrettably, which is why I don't go anywhere without Duncan and James. But you can't avoid it. You get up to a certain point. Interested actually to see how you guys do it there, because often the investors will impose a requirement for an audit just to get that sense of formality and trust, I suppose, in management done on a really official basis. If you don't do that from the investor's point of view, actually legislation will simply push you into that area. So as companies grow a bit further, that's the cycle that they come to us for. I'm actually quite passionate about audit. It's not as dull as it sounds, believe it or not, because it's not just dry compliance, it's advising businesses. And we've got to make sure that we get that message right, because quite frankly, you can commoditise it as a product. You can go out to any number of good quality firms who will come to a perfectly compliant audit for you. But I suppose what we want to test ourselves on each time is, what have you actually learned from having us as your auditor? And what I mean by that is I just don't think you can audit a company properly just by ticking a few boxes, making sure you're compliant with various regulations that you have to navigate your way through. You can't do it unless you understand the business. You've got to understand the sector that they operate in. You've got to understand what keeps the directors awake at night. What are the business risks and what are they doing about it? Because actually it's only when we as auditors come in and we have that level of understanding that we can even put ourselves in a position to begin to offer advice. And we have various sector specialisms that we go to market with. I happen to look after a lot of technology companies, we do a lot of manufacturing, we do a lot of real estate and construction. We do more than that because the local Guildford market isn't quite as neatly segmented as that. But the general principle is we believe we are experts in the sectors on which we advise people. If you think about what benefits that brings, there's no such thing as a technology company or a manufacturing company, it's just a sector. And you can go to 10 companies in the same sector, but I can assure you they'll all have slightly different ways of doing it. We get that privileged access. We get the opportunity to look at similar businesses, either across sectors or in the same one, and we see how they do it differently. And if that doesn't put us in the best position to come and speak to you and say, you're doing this all right, but have you ever thought about doing it a different way? Then actually I'm not sure we're giving you full value. And that is where we think we differentiate ourselves that way, and we're prepared to be put to the test in the marketplace on that basis. There's other service lines that we do. We do business restructuring, we do personal tax, we do all manner of stuff. I'm not going to bore you by going through it because I suspect you know that already, and I'm not here on a hard sell, but all I would say is we think we've got all bases covered, and if you want to explore that further, come and find us and we'll tell you just a little bit more about that. So I'm conscious that I don't want to take up too much of your time, so if I just try and bring that back to why BDO working with NXD to me just simply makes sense. I think it's probably worth sort of just taking a bit of a step back. You guys are all extremely experienced. I've probably told you nothing about the various phases of a business that you didn't know and probably haven't seen firsthand. And I'll be very surprised if I've told you an awful lot that surprised you about the type of service offering that you would expect someone like BDO to do. But it's about how we make that relevant in the local marketplace, and the way I would just pull that all together is to say, when it comes to depth of sector experience, when it comes to real expertise in different service lines, in a regional marketplace, which is what Guildford is, we think that we can offer the most rounded and credible service offering to be able to meet the needs of all of the businesses that you work with. So to me that makes it a very natural fit. I'm slightly conscious that Guildford's been very prominent in this, hopefully relevant, given that I think you mentioned probably 2/3 of you are from the local area. Equally, I have met a gentleman tonight based in Munich, so probably just keen to make the point that this is not a unique model. We do this, so if you are based somewhere else and you're saying everything that I've just talked about Guildford just doesn't speak to you, don't rule us out. We do this in other locations as well.